Hey everybody, welcome to Shifty's Club. Today is Monday. That means limited modified format. We're going to talk about probably one of the most interesting metagame decks that there is, and how, for some weird reason, it's able to work. And this deck is by far one of my favorites. This is called the Water Deck. Now, I know it doesn't sound sexy whatsoever, but the water type deck isn't really featuring any one particular Pokemon. It basically uses cards like Dive Ball, even the Archie's Ace in the Hole, and uses very, very specific cards in order to pretty much completely devastate your opponent. Now, these water decks usually run high amounts of pretty much Pokemon at their highest stages without their basic form. Usually some of these decks acquire 4 Archie's Ace in the Hole, they acquire Dive Ball and Ultra Ball, and even Bicycle and Arco Bike. Because don't forget, one of those top 2 cards could be a water Pokemon, discard it, get to moving with Archies. However, there are some concerns with this deck, but I'll get to them later. The best part about this deck is the ability to run Blastoise without Squirtle, Wartortle, or Rare Candy. Same thing goes for Greninja and Empoleon. Now let's start with Blastoise. Blastoise's ability is awesome. For the last, I don't know how long, Blastoise has been known as the Water Energy Acceleration Engine. And as a return in the Black and White series, Blastoise made sure that stood correct. Now, when he first came out, it seemed like the best deck was Blastoise with Keldeo EX and Black Kyurem EX. Now, this deck usually provided Black Kyurem a way to deal 200 damage on a consistent basis. Also, you had chances like Keldeo EX in order to try to deal massive damage with a huge energy acceleration engine. And a few decks even tech in cards like Scramble Switch, so you're able to get out of very sticky situations whenever you need to. And nowadays, you don't really need Black Kyurem EX to get knockouts, because now we have a better Pokemon who can consistently hit for massive amounts of damage without discarding any energy, but rather spreading the wealth. Entering Primal Kyogre EX. Now, we don't really use Kyogre EX itself unless you want to run a one of just as a tech or something, but Primal Kyogre is one of those Pokemon that you use in order to completely destroy your opponent with massive amounts of damage. Now, Primal Kyogre does for 4 water energy, pretty much. Well, it's 2 water and 2 colorless, but you're going to be running all water anyway. For 4 energy, does 150 damage and 30 to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon EX. But the drawback is you have to take 2 energy and move them to your bench. That's not a bad drawback whatsoever. And the reason why is because you're basically spreading the wealth. If he gets knocked out next turn, you only lose 2 energy, period. That makes Primal Kyogre that much better to play in competitive play. Now, I don't know how in the world this deck is possibly winning as many games as it does, as much as it relies on Archie's Ace in the Hole, which relies on you having an empty hand. So I have no idea if they're running massive amounts like Ultra Ball and Arco Bike or whatnot, because it really does not make any sense on how they can possibly get their hand down to 0 and then use Archie's Ace in the Hole. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to me. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. But I'm not seeing it as a very powerful deck in format, but as I dig deeper into this deck, I'll be able to find out exactly what I think about this deck. For now, let's leave it at the mechanics. You have Primal Kyogre EX, Blastoise, Greninja, and Empoleon. Greninja, drop 3 damage counters on your opponent's side of the field, and Empoleon, discard a card, draw 2 cards. Those are pretty much your Pokemon that you use outside of Pokemon that you pretty much just drop on the bench. Your Keldeo EXs are probably your most important because not only they're water type and they have a great attack, but their abilities are absolutely phenomenal. Those abilities absolutely are game changing. The ability to put on a float stone and free retreat out of any situation, sticky or not sticky. It's literally pretty much probably the best strategy in Pokemon is Keldeo Floatstone for a reason. But what else do they usually run with? Well, besides 10 to 12 water energy or maybe even more, I don't know. I've only tested pretty much what I call beta versions of the deck. After everyone else has tested, I took their lists and tested them to see what I thought for myself, just so I could pretty much get a feel for, okay, this person feels it's this way, so let me see how they think over on this deck. And I can pretty much get a feel on how they believe decks should be run, but I'll also get a feel on how well I think a deck will run based on how I've run it before. But being in this fact, I have to say that there's several different cards that I thought would be present in this deck that aren't. The one is the Rough Seas. I thought maybe or maybe not this card would be in the deck, and turns out Rough Seas really isn't that great to the deck. Instead, you run other cards that could help it even more. Now, I'm not exactly sure what cards I would add here, but only testing, and more testing will tell exactly what we need to put inside of the water deck. And the last card I want to get to is Muscle Man. Deck really doesn't need Muscle Man, and I found that very interesting because with 150 damage, an extra 20 doesn't really do anything, and you'd have to have things like Laser Bank to replace it, and that just gets bulky, especially in a deck that requires RTCs in the hole just to get out stage 2s. And why not Muscle Man? Well, because the damage output isn't great enough. But what would I replace it with? Well, you might want to try replacing it with cards like the Rocky Helmet's okay, but then again, it's pretty much just a repeat of Muscle Band if they attack you, which isn't that great. I'm going to say go with Hard Charm. And the reason I say that is because you can keep as much damage off of Primal Kyogre as possible. And sometimes the damage is enough to knock them out in 1 or 2 hits. And if they know they're going up against a Primal Kyogre, they're going to try to get that 2-hit knockout. And if they're doing, say, 120, 130 damage on a consistent basis, they're going to eventually get the knockout. And that's when it becomes a liability on their behalf when they're not doing enough damage. Anyway, I'm Shifty, and this is Monday with limited format. Like I said, guys, before, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Post any comments you have in the comment section down below. And if you have any ideas for modified limited format Monday, just give me a shout out, guys. And again, if your comments are approved, I'll post them. And I'll see you guys next time at Shifty's Club.